Will Howard's confidence is helping set the tone as the Buckeyes prepare for a rematch with the Ducks.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Thursday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. During today's show, we'll dive into our weekly stock watch as well as what TreVeyon Henderson is ready to do in the Rose Bowl. But before we get to any of that, it's all about Will Howard's confidence that is helping set the tone for Ohio State as the Buckeyes prepare for a rematch with the Ducks in the Rose Bowl. And Will Howard right now is playing like a man possessed. He is playing like a man that understands the assignment and does what is needed before the game and leading up on game day for the Buckeyes to be successful on offense. Yes, he's had his blemishes along the way, but what we saw against Tennessee was Will Howard leading the troops, Will Howard being super confident, and he trusted his preparation, he trusted his coaches, and that's how we got the performance we got against Tennessee, which is a big reason why he's helping set the tone against Oregon. Not only is he QB1, but if I am Jeremiah Smith, or if I'm Donovan Jackson, or if I'm Carson Hinsman, or if I'm Emeka Buka, or anybody on offense, I can look at QB1 and say, hey, man, number 18 going to get it done. Number 18 is going to do everything leading up to the game. I'm going to do everything and be there and meet all of his media availability, do everything that you want from your starting quarterback. Number 18 is going to be that guy. So all I got to do is just do my job and just trust him, and he's going to do his job and let the chips fall where they may. I'm not going to sit up here and say the Buckeyes are going to win or lose. I'm not ready to make that bold proclamation yet. However, I am here to say that Will Howard is what you want from a starting quarterback at Ohio State going into the game against Oregon. His confidence, his ability to trust his players, to trust his coaches, to understand the magnitude of the moment that's right in front of Ohio State, that's what you want from a QB1. And Will Howard, I do believe right now, the day after Christmas, is ready. He's working. He is grinding for that 5 p.m. Eastern kickoff out there in Pasadena. He understands it's win or go home. It's do or die. All of the cliche things you can put in there about, well, if you win this game, great, you're going to move on. If you lose this game, you might as well start up the 1, 2, 3 Cancun chant. That's what's going to happen for you and your boys. He understands what's right in front of him. He also understands what happened the last time Ohio State played against Oregon. Because that final play, he had to answer questions. He was under a lot of scrutiny and criticism for the final play of the game. Also, he was under a lot of scrutiny for some things that he did throughout the game prior to that play because of how the offense looked that day. But this is another day. You can't dwell on what happened on October 12th. You can't let that cloud your brain and cloud your preparation as far as knowing that this Oregon team you're going to go up against is not the same Oregon team you played on October 12th. Ohio State is not the same team currently that they were on October 12th. So there's a back and forth. There is a reality that Ohio State, if they play their best, can beat Oregon. Because I don't think anybody's going to sit up here and say that Ohio State's best was what we saw on October 12th. I didn't see that. I don't think you saw that. People around the country, I don't think Oregon would even say that. This Oregon team has some areas that Ohio State can exploit on offense. And it may not be that Will Howard's arm is going to be the big focus of the offense, even though I do think you got Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Buka, and Cardinal Tate. Those are that's two easy touchdowns. I'm not saying who the ball's going to go to. I think Jeremiah Smith should have at least one receiving touchdown this weekend. But I'm not here to say there's going to be Jeremiah Smith and nobody else is going to score. I ain't that naive. That's not me. But Will Howard, man, the one area that he was questioned about all season long, even by yours truly, was his deep ball. How accurate is he? Does he have the arm strength to make that thing happen? And what we saw against Tennessee, which gives me more confidence in Will Howard going into this game, is that Will Howard only had one incompletion on passes that were over 20 yards. He was 2 for 2 to the left side. He was 0 for 1 to the middle of the field. That was where the interception was, which truly should not have been an interception, but that rule, the ref did not call the pass interference. So in the rule book stat sheet, it is an interception. And then to the right, he was 2 for 2. 2 for 2 to the left side, 20-plus yard throws for 59 yards and 2 tugs. On the right side, 2 for 2 of throws over 20-plus yards, 66 yards. That's not what I would have expected from Will Howard at all this season. 4 for 5, and it really should be 5 for 5. I didn't expect that. I questioned his arm strength or before the season, during the season, towards the end of the season, the regular season. I questioned it. We never saw it consistently. Ryan Day, nor Chip Kelly, nor Brian Hartline really had such an influence that Will Howard was making these throws like he did against Tennessee. Now, I know the Tennessee game was almost a week ago, so we're not trying to rehash that, but that's a big reason why there's confidence in Ohio State's QB1 this weekend, or a week from now, because of what happened against Tennessee. Also, we're finally getting a glimpse of what Ohio State is at full strength. And it truly is one of the best teams in the country. And I think if Ohio State plays like they did against Tennessee, they're going to beat Oregon. And that's not to say Oregon's not going to pose a threat to Ohio State, because I believe Oregon can pose threats in numerous areas for the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll talk more about the Buckeyes defense tomorrow and some of my early or about a week out thoughts about the Buckeyes defense going up against the Ducks once again, because Dillon Gabriel is phenomenal in big games. But I do think the Buckeyes defense, hint, hint, looking into the window for tomorrow's show, I do think the Buckeyes defense had something for Dillon Gabriel that they did not do when they played on October 12th. That's all I'll say about that. Tap into tomorrow's show to get more thoughts about the Buckeyes defense going up against the Ducks. Will Howard trust his coaches? Will Howard trust his teammates? His teammates have a belief in him that should cause everyone to be confident about what Will Howard and the offense will do against the Ducks in a rematch. The one thing that I think could be a hiccup, let's just say it's another day like Michigan, where Will Howard has a mistake, where he normally bounces back pretty well off of an initial mistake. Oh, no, here's another one. And then all of a sudden, this can't work, and that can't work. And all of a sudden, you're looking at Will Howard saying, hey, we know how good you are. We've seen you play pretty good ball. Why is this happening now? Why can't you get over the hurdle, the mental block? Well, it didn't happen against Michigan, and I firmly think he was not well enough to play. No one's come out to confirm that, but my eyeballs, even after he was running down the sidelines and trying to hype up the crowd, I saw Will Howard play in a way that it surely seemed like he didn't have that strength to throw that ball like he wanted to. I mean, even at the end of the game, final drive of the game, where you're thinking, hey, man, drive that ball down the field, drive it with your arm, pass to the right to the short side of the field, pass another one to the right to the short side of the field. And I'm thinking, Will Howard, man, your arm, oh, wait. I know you got an arm on you, but that arm strength might be a little diminished because of that big kick you took earlier in the game. Will Howard should be confident. The Buckeyes should be confident in their QB1. And a lot of us have been skeptical about Will Howard and his play and what he'll do in the Scarlet and Gray in the postseason. You got one down. You got to win one more to keep your season alive. And I think Ohio State and Will Howard, as he's helping set the tone, he's helping set the right tone for the Buckeyes to head into that game against Oregon on a high, with the confidence that they possess going into that rematch against Oregon. Speaking of a rematch against Oregon, there's a guy that wears number 32 in Columbus named TreVeyon Henderson, who I think is planning on doing big things in the Rose Bowl when the Bucks and the Ducks have a rematch on New Year's Day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. Everything you need for in-home and even backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. They are family-owned and operated, and when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Thank you all for tapping into Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. TreVeyon Henderson's final year in Columbus has been very, very interesting. He's found himself splitting time with Quinshon Judkins. He's found himself getting less touches every single game, and he's found himself being utilized in a different way this year in the Buckeyes offense. Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, they use their expertise and their knowledge to kind of map out the offense this year and map out when guys would be on the field and when guys wouldn't be on the field. And I think all of that is to help for this moment in the season where TreVeyon Henderson got less touches, doesn't have the same wear and tear that he's had on his body in previous seasons. I do think that's going to be a major benefit for the Buckeyes in the rematch against Oregon, because that lack of wear and tear throughout the season will be a big reason why TreVeyon Henderson goes off against Oregon. Now, there are lots of factors in that, but I do think TreVeyon Henderson will find a way to get loose. So we'll find a way to be a big piece of the pie for the Buckeyes offense on New Year's Day. No, I'm not sitting here to say that he's going to have 3 touchdowns, or I'm not here to say that he's going 3 on the ground, 3 in the air, 6 total. I'm not here to say that. But I do think TreVeyon Henderson will have the best game of his final year in Columbus in this regular season. Now, you'll be able to say, Jay, that's a big statement. That's pretty big, buddy. Don't you realize that what you're saying now? He's splitting time with Quinshon Judkins, and the Oregon front's really good. Marcus Harmer was a game record the last time they played. Mateo Uyunglele was doing some same things, and now you're saying they got Jordan Birch back who didn't play in the first meeting. Are you really sure that TreVeyon Henderson is going to have this kind of game? Absolutely. Let's look at the numbers from this season. This goes into why I firmly believe this. The numbers back up what I currently think is going to happen. Well, before I say the numbers, I don't want to go that far yet. I want to throw a couple things at you, and I know the answer. In your head, think right now, watching on YouTube or on an audio podcast app of your choosing, how many 100-yard games this year do you think TreVeyon Henderson has? Number 2, do you think TreVeyon Henderson has over 100 rushing yards in the game against Oregon? Those are the 2 questions. I'll start verbally tap dancing a little bit to kind of allow you to think about that before I dive into the reality of that first question. Is TreVeyon Henderson has had 0 games of over 100 yards rushing this year. Now, maybe want to say, Jay, it's a little astonishing. That's a little hard to believe. It absolutely is hard to believe, and it's true. This year, TreVeyon Henderson, the most rushing yards he's had in a single game was actually against Oregon on October 12th. 10 carries, 87 rushing yards, 8.7 yards a pop. But many of you will remember, during the second half of that game, the Buckeyes couldn't rush the ball for nothing. If their life depended on it, they didn't get it done that day. Now, Simmons goes out, and so that is one of the things that really negatively impacted the Buckeyes' rushing attack that day. However, in reality, they couldn't get it done. And I do have more faith in the current construction of the Buckeyes O-line now, even with you Buckeyes using 3 offensive guards, and I still don't like that. I don't care if it worked. That's not really the coaching move that I would ever point to, injured or not, and saying, oh, well, let's rotate and play 3 guys. I still find that coaching move very, very weird. It worked against Tennessee. It might even work against Oregon. But I do think TreVeyon Henderson is going to have on the ground over 100 yards rushing. And I think he's going to have 2 rushing touchdowns. I don't normally say that about a guy saying, oh, you got to have certain number of touchdowns for the team to be very successful. Maybe not him specifically. 2 on the ground. I think he's going to have over 100 because it's going to be needed. Where Oregon might be able to focus on a certain way that Quinshon Judkins can run the ball, Henderson has shown his ability to be really good at running between the tackles and outside the tackles. And if I'm Derek Harmon, if I'm Dan Lanning, or if I'm anybody over there at Oregon, where I may have been a little bit more worried about Quinshon Judkins early because Judkins' first half of the season was pretty good. I do think that Henderson is the guy you have to focus on because he's going to lay it all on the line. Literally do whatever it takes. No, going into that Tennessee game, it was, hey, we're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to let it rip. And that's exactly what they did, which is why I kind of have a belief right now. And I'm not trying to see this through scarlet lenses. I realize that I don't know what team's going to show up. I have a feeling I know what team's going to show up for Ohio State against Oregon. But even then, we saw that version of Ohio State once in 13 games. Once in 13 games on both sides of the ball. And so I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh, I know that team that came out and played against Tennessee is going to be the same team that comes out and plays against Oregon. But I think we're going to be closer to that version than the version against Michigan or some of the other versions this year where it just really wasn't shaky like Buckeye fans thought it should, or really how it should in general, forgetting what kind of fan you are. I think the Buckeyes should have been playing like that all year long. You would have been undefeated. You would have won the conference. You would have beat Michigan, and you would have accomplished two of the three goals you set out to accomplish this year. They didn't do that. They still have a chance to accomplish that final goal, even though they didn't accomplish the final two. And let that final goal fuel you and allow the failures at times throughout the season to also add fuel to the fire inside of you to do what is needed for the team to win. And I do think this weekend for TreVeyon Henderson, he's going to be Will Howard's best friend. And we may see more read option plays from Will Howard and TreVeyon Henderson, or Will Howard and Quinshon Judkins, because I do think that's one of those pieces of the pie offensively that we really haven't seen much of. I do think, though, that it should be. I do think Will Howard, and I had his numbers up earlier, Will Howard really hasn't ran much. I think the most carries he's had this year is 12, and I don't know the difference between was that a sack involved with that or was it not, at least on the screen that I was looking at. So I'm not really sure, but I do know that read option thing is going to help TreVeyon Henderson get loose, and that's a way to confuse the opposing defense. Early in the year, I made comments about the Buckeyes offense, and I said the Buckeyes triple option is deadly. Now, you better say, Jay, the triple option offense, that's not what Ohio State runs. You mean the old school Georgia Tech offense or the Army or Navy offense where it's a traditional triple option look? No, not that. The Buckeyes RPO is a legit triple option. Hand off to the running back, throw it to the receiver or the tight end, or maybe even a keeper for the quarterback. That triple option is deadly because even though Will Howard hasn't ran that much, he had a run the other day against Tennessee where you're like, oh, there's that get out kind of bend down towards the ground that you were expecting to see from Will Howard. I forget, he scrambled for about 6 yards, and I'm thinking, hey, man, I saw a version of that on YouTube leading up to the game where I saw some clips of you when you were at Kansas State, and all of a sudden, buddy, you run up the sidelines like a deer just getting out there, getting after it. And I'm sitting here saying, why don't you do that at Ohio State? Is it a Ryan Day thing? Is it a Will Howard thing? I don't know. Regardless of what's happened in the previous 13 games, in game number 14, this can happen. And that will drastically impact TreVeyon Henderson's success on the field on New Year's Day. I keep wanting to say Saturday. My dad asked me on Christmas, he was like, hey, man, what time does Ohio State play Saturday? I said, Dad, they play on New Year's Day. They play in the Rose Bowl at 5. He's like, oh, okay. But even people like my dad knows the football schedule pretty well. And I mean, you and I, we do this Buckeye thing on a regular basis, 5 days a week, every Monday through Friday. And so even the new schedule for the playoff, it don't make no sense. For people like us, people like my dad, it don't make no sense. But who are we? We're very intelligent people that believe there should be some tweaks made to the CFP. We're also very intelligent people that realize that TreVeyon Henderson will probably have a big day against Oregon. I do know that is probably going to happen. Coming up next, oh man, it's a weekly stock watch. Didn't have it on a Christmas day. We're doing it the day after Christmas. And let me just tell you, we got some ESPN on ESPN beef that's going to find its way in the final part of today's show. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time is a place for Buckeye fans to go that are planning to buy tickets to the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. Trust me, there's a lot of different places to go out there, and none of them really make your ticket purchasing process as seamless as Game Time does. Game Time has all-in pricing. You're able to see a panoramic view from your seat, and they also have Game Time ticket coverage, which means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. All of it is geared to help take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you all for tapping in Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. Stock up, stock down on the day after Christmas. We're going to be very excited and thankful for a lot of things going on with the Buckeyes. But we got to find ways to not so much be negative, but to make college football better. Stock up on the Buckeyes staying alive in the CFP, because trust me, when we went into that game, we were talking about that game for Ohio State. Some people were very, very confident Ohio State would win. A lot of people thought the Buckeyes could win, but there were a lot of people that thought Tennessee could win as well. The Buckeyes showed up. The Buckeyes showed out in a very big way, and they showed everybody and their mama. If Ohio State plays their best ball, they might be the best team in the country. Now, I say might because they lost to the number one team in the country when they met on October 12th. Now they have a chance to get a win over that team that beat them on October 12th about a week from now on New Year's Day out there in Pasadena. One is the Rose Bowl. It's my favorite bowl game of bowl season. I know the Peach Bowl is cool. I know the Cotton Bowl is cool. And I like all the Tony the Tiger Bowl and the Sun Bowl and even that Reliant Quest Bowl, which was the Outback Bowl. Like, I like some of them bowls, man. They're fun. Fiesta Bowl is always a banger. But, man, the granddaddy of them all hits different. The Buckeyes and the Ducks are playing in this thing. Traditional Pac-12 team, old traditional Pac-12 team versus a traditional Big Ten team. They're meeting here in this game. I like it. I love it. Now I just love we can fast forward to that day on New Year's Day. I might be a little nervous going into the game, but I just want to fast forward to that game and watch some good Buckeye football. I think it's what we all are going to be able to watch on that day. Stock up on seeing the Buckeyes at their best. We've been waiting for this all season long. You, me, your mama, everybody's been waiting for this all season long, and the Buckeyes saved it for their final game in the shoe, where they showed everybody in attendance, maybe an Oregon fan there, Ohio State fan, a Tennessee fan. They showed everybody what they can do when they're at their best. And that's huge. I mean, talk about Will Howard's confidence earlier and what TreVeyon Henderson, what I think he'll do in this game against Tennessee. I do think he'll have two tugs on the ground, and I do think he'll go for 400 rushing yards. I do think that even with the Buckeyes' makeshift offensive line, I 100% believe TreVeyon Henderson is not going to just lay points out there on the field and kind of lay down for the Oregon defense. No, I do believe he's going to have a monster game for Ohio State. And I do think that is a big thing for Ohio State. We know what they can be, because what they were against Tennessee is what we thought they could have been all season. Oregon's a different animal, but Ohio State has the goods in all three levels, all three parts of the game, to allow the Buckeyes to end this game victorious. Also, stock up on some ESPN beef. We don't normally talk about television networks and beef there, but man, I got to. The way Kirk Herbstreit called out First Take in that day, and he said, well, the guys on First Take were calling for Ryan Day's job. The guys on First Take weren't doing anything different than a lot of other people. It's just your channel's different. You are on a bigger platform. You're on the worldwide leader, and as Stephen A. Smith will always tell you, that show has dominated that time slot for years. So when you dominated that time slot for years, it's kind of in between like that mid-morning for East Coast and then early wake up on the West Coast. You're getting a lot of people in that time period where they can watch the show or catch the podcast or catch clips on the YouTube, and they'll be glued into certain segments. And so when First Take talks college football, it does feel weird. That's not normally their jam. More of a professional NBA or Major League or NFL type of show. They'll dabble in some Shohei Ohtani type of stuff, but it's very it depends on the topic. Not so much talking about things he's done on the field, but more so, well, what about his interpreter? Like, it's more so topics and current events things. And so when they talk college football, it doesn't really get my attention. Well, you talk about an Ohio State coach, it's going to get some clicks. And then we say, man, he's going to be fired. It's going to get a whole lot more clicks. And Herbie was not for that. He didn't really go with that. And he did say, I wonder what those guys will say on Monday. Shannon Sharp didn't like it. He kind of bit back and said, man, enough bosses at ESPN to hold me back. Like, I get egos, man. Because trust me, I host a solo show, and people will come back at me for things I say. Like, I get it, but really, he literally just commented about an opinion you had about you saying the guy should get fired. Should bosses have to get between y'all for him saying something about your opinion? Absolutely not. And to get some guys at the worldwide leader, ESPN versus ESPN beef, I kind of enjoy it sometimes. I find it silly a little bit too, but I kind of enjoy it. Stock down on games this weekend not being on home campuses. And it's only one on the stock downside. I didn't want to be too negative. It's Christmas week, man. I could have just left the negative stuff out. But, we always got to find ways to not so much rip stuff, but this is more make stuff better. I believe that quarterfinal games should be on home sites. And we didn't need the first-round games to be on home sites this past weekend to kind of get a belief that should be the thing. We know what college football is all about. And one of the biggest things that makes college football great is games on campus. The Horseshoe, Beaver Stadium in Happy Valley, Tiger Stadium, Saturday nights at LSU, Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mean, I can't think of Georgia's Sanford Stadium. I forget the name of that stadium. The Rose Bowl, another one. The Cotton Bowl Stadium, right there down there in Dallas, where you get the Texas State Fair. Then also you get Oklahoma and Texas. You get DKR. And there are so many great venues in college football. If I'm going to get a bye, why shouldn't I host a playoff game? If I'm a network, ESPN, because they own all the games, they had a sub-license some of the games to TNT this past weekend, even though there were some ESPN voices calling those games. We're also thinking, if it's TNT, could we get an Iron Eagle or a Kevin Harlan calling a college football game? Because to me, look, I love Iron Eagle calling games, and I love Kevin Harlan calling games. Give them some analysts, cool. Make that thing happen. Sub-license that game to Fox or CB. Oh, no, you don't do that. Those are your competitors. Okay, do it. Because I want the elite of the elite of the elite. It ain't nothing against Dave Pash. He does great work. Ain't nothing against Mark Jones. Does good work. I think Kevin Harlan and Iron Eagle, who are employed by TNT, are two of the best in the game. And so let's just say next year, if they try to make a tweak to the thing, they say, okay, cool. The quarterfinal games are going to expand outside of 12. But if you get a bye, we're going to give you a home game. And let's just say TNT wants to get back into this thing. You know what you do? TNT, use your own voices. I know TNT is not a hot spot for college football, but there are enough great voices over there at TNT that are employed for basketball stuff. They could, hey, you want to kind of add this to your contract here real quick? Yeah, we got this game right here on December, whatever. One game. Can you make it? CBS probably wouldn't like that because I don't know if they want to have a guy doing a football game on a Saturday and then another football game on a Sunday. But we all know there are guys. Kevin Harlan does a CBS game on a Sunday, does a Westwood one game on a Monday. They can make it work. He's a pros. Best of the best. They can make it work. So only really negative thing today to say right now is not really negative. It's just a tweet. Oregon, Boise State, Georgia, and there's one more. Arizona State. Yeah. Oh, they all are the teams that got the box. I totally spaced it, man. I totally spaced it. But let them play at home, man. And then you let them play at home. The blue turf in a playoff game. Sign me up for that. Put it in pen. I don't think Boise State should have gotten the bye. In the current format, they do. Reward them for that. We're up out of here, y'all, on a Thursday. Got one more day left this week. Friday show is going to be another hot one. Then we got a few more days before the rematches in Oregon and Ohio State. Got some big-time shows coming up next week leading into the game. Then also, you already know our Buckeye Squad show after the game. It's going to be an hour-long show recapping the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, which should be a fun game to watch. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. We're about here, Buckeye fans, on a Thursday. We'll see you next time.